All right. I think we are live now. So we'll give people a chance to get on here. But thank
Okay.
you, everybody. Go ahead. Did you?
I got nothing.
Okay.
No. It looks like it's just us two. Oh, wait.
It's
No, that's just going to show us. So there's going to be a lot more people than I can see, right?
yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's just us two that you can see here, but I'll let you know how it's going on Facebook Live and any comments that we have. So right now we have
Cool.
about 4 people watching, but for the lunch and learns we have been it's usually been about 30, anywhere from 30 to 60 people. So
Oh,
yeah.
uh,
So for everyone just joining us, this is Lunch and Learn for Skydive Chicago during the winter, and we have Anthony here, who is our GM, and is going to be going over how to calculate the spot, which I think is a skill that we all are supposed to have learned at some point in time, but very frequently doesn't get used by a lot of regular jumpers unless they're the SNTA or something at their drop zone. So good review for a lot of people. But yeah, how's your winter been going? Excited for the season to start? Still have a
yes, we're getting things going. Everyone's going to be pretty excited. We are doing some uplifts around the drop zone. So excited to see everybody's expressions when they walk in.
yeah.
I think we're getting safety day all started up too. We got some special guest appearances, which is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Some changes around here, and they'll get to introduce themselves during safety day.
Cool. Yep. I think we'll have Albert from the USPA, executive director. So that's very exciting.
Yes.
And yeah, it'll be a good time. I'm excited to see the atrium and stuff myself. I've heard very good things.
It is so impressive. It is awesome. In all of things, it's just a nice shine up of everything.
Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I think we'll go ahead and get started. It's a little bit after 1. We have about 25 people watching so far, and we'll do about 10 to 20 minutes, however long it takes to explain kind of how to calculate the spot, and then I'll let you know any questions that come up from anyone watching.
Sounds great. All right, guys. So when Tracy asked me how to calculate spot, I was thinking, yeah, it's perfect. I do it nearly every day. But kind of what I do and what your apps do are completely different. So they can. Oh, I need to share the screen now, bro. All right. All right, guys. So aircraft spotting. So to get started, what is the spot? So a spot is the line of flight that the airplane flies with the goal that everybody makes it back. All right. So it's that line that we're going to fly. And aircraft spotting. So to get started, what is the spot? But it's that line that we're going to fly in order to make it back. Some key terms that you guys are going to have to know about that involve the spot. One is ground speed. You probably hear everybody talk about it before you leave the airplane. And also they scream out how many seconds. So what the ground speed is, it's the aircraft's true airspeed. It tells you how fast it moves relative to the surrounding air. While the ground speed is at the horizontal speed relative to the Earth's surface. So to make it simple, when the winds are high up top, your ground speed is slow. Okay, when the winds are slow, so that means the airplane isn't moving that fast. If there's not a lot of wind up top, or we're going downwind, it means our ground speed is going to be much, much higher, which means we have less time to leave the aircraft. Some other key things we need to know about is the center point. The center point is ground zero, and here at Skydive Chicago, our ground zero is where the windsock is. It's where the turnaround is. Let me grab so you guys have a map. Well, it's not coming up. Well, all I was going to show you is where the center point is, and that's basically where the windsock is. So when we say the spot is 0.2 prior, 270, 0.2 prior, that is 0.2 of a mile prior to our center point. Some other thing is our runway is 4,535 feet long, and we have a heading of 030 to 210. So it runs from northeast to southwest. And one thing, who is the spot made for? So it's made for all straight down disciplines, and that means the pulling between 3,500 and 5,000 feet. And notice I didn't mention movement groups, wingsuits, low pullers, or any other specialty groups. So when we calculate the spot for today, we don't really take those groups into consideration. It's only for straight down people pulling at roughly 3,500 feet. So let's get into the nitty-gritty of it. So how do we figure out spot? So one, we do the math. So to do the math, we got to figure out what the upper winds are doing. And to get those winds, you can either go to our app and find it there, or there's a couple other things. You can go to aviation, right here, aviationweather.gov, and what we would use is JOT. JOT is Joliet, and how to read all these numbers is the first two numbers is the direction in which it's coming from 3,000 feet. So the winds at Joliet are coming from at 3,000 feet are coming from 220 at 11 knots. All right. Then you go up here. They're coming from 6,000 feet. They're coming from 250 at 17 knots. The other stuff here, that's just the temperature. Yeah. So it's still quite cold up here. Again, 9,000 feet, 240 at 26 knots, and 12,000 feet are coming from 250 at 38 knots. So that's one way you can get the upper winds. The other way is if you go to Mark Schultz. This app's been used quite a bit, and it gives you a little bit more information. It gives you per 1,000 feet. Now, both of these people, they get it from two different sources. Aviation Weather, they actually send the balloon up and measure the winds, and this is how they get it. And they only do this about every 4 hours. Mark Schultz, they actually get it from a lot of other airplanes that are measuring the winds up top. And then they get an algorithm to figure it out. So this just came up a few years ago. I was a little hesitant to use it because they really didn't give exact sources of where they get the winds. But the more and more I use it, I realize that it's fairly accurate. So either one, whether you're getting it from Mark Schultz or from Aviation Weather, each one of those have been pretty good. So once you get those numbers, you're gonna have to kind of do some math. And I've created a quick little spreadsheet to see how this works. So I put the direction in there. I've also put the wind speed, and this is today's winds. So you're first gonna get the line of flight. And how you do that is you take the average of all your directions. So right there it says 228. So that would mean our line of flight would be 228 degrees. We always round. We don't say we need to go 229 or anything like that. So we would just go 230 for the line of flight. Then we got to figure out basically our free fall drift. So free fall drift is the amount of movement that you get from the time you exit the plane to the time you open. Because when you exit the plane, you're not falling straight down. The wind is actually pushing you. And the longer you are in free fall, the longer you're going to get, the wind is going to push you. So to get that number, what you're going to do is you're going to get the average wind speed. So here it's 23. You're going to divide it by the time in free fall. So we just figure out that it's roughly 60 seconds if you're doing a belly jump. And then it's the average wind speed divided by 60 times a mile, which we're going to go in feet, which is 5,280 feet. So I've already done the math in that little calculation, and with that, you get a free fall drift of 2,000 feet. So it's going to be just under a half a mile of drift that you're going to get in free fall. So theoretically, if you got out of the plane right over the top of the airport, you would drift 2,224 feet behind the wind line. So if we were going to be jumping today, I would probably pick a line of flight of maybe 230, and then we would do, 0.3 past or so. This is where it kind of comes in, where if you do it exact math, it doesn't quite work because there's a lot of variables that goes in. I would do that because if you look at the canopy winds right here, they're pretty low. It's not something to be too concerned about. If you do go behind the wind line a little bit, the wind's low enough where you could penetrate and get back to your spot. So that's kind of a quick way of how you would do the math. Now, I wouldn't expect everybody to get a spreadsheet and do it like this. There's a lot of apps out there that will do that for you. The big one is a Spot Assist. That's a great tool to use in order to figure out the spot. So I'm gonna hold on. I'm gonna try to get the map up real quick.
While you're getting the map up, we've had 2 questions so far.
Yep.
Mike Romero is wondering where we can get the spreadsheet that you have on the screen, or you mentioned that there are a couple apps that you can use.
Yeah. So Spot Assist, otherwise a spreadsheet, I can just give a link to it. I basically made this really quick the other day, so I can give you a link to this and share it, and anybody can use it whenever they want to.
Okay, yeah, we can put it in.
But to make it a little bit nicer, unfortunately, I couldn't figure out how to get Spot Assist on the screen.
Yeah.
But that gives a little bit better, it's just a lot more user-friendly with it all.
Cool.
Just go to your app store and go to Spot Assist, and you'll be able to download it for free.
It's free. And then Skydive Eldorado is asking, is this how to properly throw out a WDI over the DZ and calculate the spot?
Well, I have WDIs on my list, but to be perfectly honest, I wasn't going to give a lot of input to WDIs because I really don't know very many drop zones that actually do that. So talk a little bit about that. What WDIs are wind drift indicators, and they're basically like big tissue balls or streamers, and they're weighted differently, and you drop it out at maybe 4,000 feet, and then you can watch and see how far apart they move. And from there, you can get an idea of the direction of the wind and also how fast the wind is moving. We used to do that a lot before, the government came out and was able to give us winds like this. Before there was Mark Schultz and the Winds Aloft and all that was presented, we used WDIs for that. Now, I know like the Golden Knights, they still a lot of times use it. They use it a lot for show just because it's kind of fun to watch. But most people just use the Winds Aloft, the technology that we have now, to get online and just get the information. But as far as how to spot directly with the WDI, to be honest, I really don't know because we've been using these winds for 15, 20 years. Most of my skydiving career have been used by just getting these winds online. Okay. So, I got the map up here. So just to kind of give an idea, I said the line of flight would be 230 on 0.3 past. So our runway runs from 210 to 030. So the 230 would be around here. And again, this is what I was talking about. My center point is right here at the turnaround. So our line of flight would be here, and our green light would be about 3/10 prior, so it'd be about right there. So today's a pretty easy day. If we were gonna do the spot, I wanted to talk about how we would figure out the spot on some different wind conditions. So I've already put in here, LV is a term used for light and variable. So you can see here the wind directions from 180, 200, 270, So it's kind of like starts off from the north and it goes, let's change these up just to make it easy for everybody. So they're all kind of coming from the same direction, but there's not a lot of wind. So on a light and variable day, you can put in the numbers. You would get a free fall drift of about 330 feet, which is not much at all. So the green light you would theoretically think that it's going to be over the top. So like right here. Now here at Skydive Chicago, your spot's going to change depending on the aircraft. If I have a little Cessna and there's a four-way going out, yeah, I'd want to get out right over the top because there's not a lot of wind to bring us back home. But if we're jumping the Otter and there's 21 people that we have to exit the airplane, we're going to have to adjust that a little bit. So on a no-wind day, rule of thumb, we like to think that a mile prior or maybe 8/10 prior and a mile past, that is a big enough footprint for everybody to be able to get out of the airplane and still make it back. So on those light and variable days, it's going to be quite a bit earlier for our green light. And it's one thing to consider too. Does anybody know who should get the best spot in the plane, say if there's an Otter? Maybe I'll get some answers here.
I don't see any comments so far, but there is a little bit of a delay between the Facebook Live and what we or you talking. So
I'll keep it less awkward. I'm just going to go ahead and answer this.
Perfect.
So, rule of thumb: the worst spot in the plane should be the first ones out.
So yes, okay. Wait, we have answers now. TJ says middle group. Will Davis says tandems. Someone said middle of the plane. Josh said students. Nate said hop and pops. Got almost everyone covered except for free flyers.
Free flyers. So the middle of the plane theoretically should have the best spot. So the first ones out are going to have kind of the worst spot, and then obviously the last ones. Now, it's not saying that's a bad spot. If everybody makes it back, then it's a good spot. But that's kind of the rule of thumb. If you're the first one out, kind of keep in the back of your head, you might not have the greatest spot. Because again, we need to have enough area booking a footprint to get 21 people out of the plane, or however many groups that we have on that particular airplane. So I'm going to go into some other ones, for lack of a better term, wonky winds. Okay, so it's really nice when the winds are all coming from a similar direction, like in something like this. It makes everything quite nice. You can go into the wind and go. But then you get days that are kind of like this. So we would start off pretty high winds coming out of the north. Then it moves to pretty decent winds coming straight out of the west. And then we get surface and canopy winds that are coming straight out of the south. So if I was a newer jumper and I saw these winds, I would probably just sit on the ground and watch a load or two before we get all adjusted. So this is how we would kind of figure out this situation. Now there's two ways. We could, again, if we put in the numbers here, our line of flight would be 240. So that would be roughly this direction like that. The problem with that is we have the top winds are coming out of 360 at 30 knots. So that would put the airplane flying downwind. That would put our ground speed at an incredibly fast rate. And what I mean is we're going to have a bit of a tailwind. We're going to, from the time we get our green light to over there is going to be 45 seconds to a minute. That's not going to be enough time to get everybody out. So it brings up a point that we here at Skydive, we really try to fly the airplane into the wind. So it decreases our ground speed and it allows more time for all the skydivers to get out of the plane. So in this particular, instead of running 240, I would probably run this one into the wind, and then maybe green light it further out there, because all of our canopy winds are coming out of the south. So this is where we would really like to open up. So I would start it going, go into the wind going north, green light it earlier, like maybe 0.8 prior. And then what we would do is probably hook it around at 0.2 past or 0.3 past. So hopefully I didn't lose everybody on that, but it's kind of a combination of, we need to get everybody upwind of the surface winds, but we still need to fly our airplane into the wind to slow our ground speed down. Right. Cool. The last kind of thing I want to talk about, as far as the different types of wind conditions that we sometimes deal with here, are opposing winds. And if you guys have jumped here on particular days, you might see me go down to the loading area and talk about this. And what opposing winds mean is all the upper winds are coming from one direction and all the lower winds are coming out of the complete opposite direction. And just like I said on the last one, we would probably, if the upper winds are coming out of the north, but we're landing south because of the surface winds, we would green light it much earlier and then fly into the wind, and then probably have to turn it around over the top, do a hook. Some of the dangers with that is if you're flying into the wind and everybody's exiting the aircraft, the first thing people do is they want to fly back to our back to where their holding area is going to be. And in most cases, if everything's going upwind, that's away from the line of flight. But when there's opposing winds, what's going to happen is people are going to start flying up jump run in order to make it back. So if you ever get a situation that there is opposing winds, even though you should once you jump out, your canopy opens, you need to be flying perpendicular to the line of flight. It's a good habit to get into on every single jump, but it's even more imperative to do that when you know that going back to the drop zone means that you're going to be flying upwind. So that's just kind of a brief, kind of went over some of the different wind conditions that we kind of get to here at Skydive Chicago. Since I'm talking about it, I think a lot of people get confused by a hook, so I'm going to kind of explain that too. Here at Skydive Chicago, we do what's called a hook. What a hook is when we get out to the furthest point that we think people aren't going to make it back, we do a left turn, usually it's a left turn, and then start flying back perpendicular to our original line of flight. The reasoning why we do this is, one, so people land on the drop zone, but two, it's a lot more fuel efficient and it's a lot more time efficient than doing a complete go around. And I have a feeling with fuel prices going the way they're going, I might get calls from other drop zones to figure out how we do the hook, just because fuel is getting quite expensive. So how we determine it is, say the jump run is north that particular day. We've realized that, once you get out here, maybe a mile past, it's too far. People aren't going to make it back. So I'll say, all right, the hook is at a 1 mile apex. So what that means is the apex is the furthest out after we started it. So if we're coming here, we're actually going to start the hook at maybe 0.7 past, start our left turn, and then it's going to be a mile past, that's the apex, and that's going to be the furthest point north that you can see. Hopefully everybody can see my cursor when doing this. And then we start flying back. And we do a 0.3 offset between the original jump run and when we do an offset to if it's to the left, and that should allow enough space between all the groups that are exiting. Some things to keep in mind is after we do the hook, if we're flying into the wind on that particular day, and then we do the other jump run or after the hook, your ground speed in many cases is going to increase. So if you happen to know that you are on the back side of the hook, do know that the time between groups in most cases are going to shorten because the plane is moving at a much faster speed. Thankfully, most of the time, it's the tandems that are in the back of the hook, and fun jumpers, you don't have to worry about it, but it's good to know about that, which way the hook's going, especially if you're doing a movement group, because you want to try to move in the opposite direction of whatever the hook is going.
All right, we have one question about the hook.
Yeah.
When separation do you strive for between the now 2 parallel jump runs? And you said 0.3, right?
0.3, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then also in that turn, do you turn the green light off and wait for more separation?
No. So, and theoretically, again, usually the hook, when you're in the hook, again, that's the furthest out. That's probably going to be the worst spot. But if we're doing our job right, you should still be able to make it back. All right. So if we don't turn the red light on, because you can still exit on the hook. Now, if you're looking out and you just don't like the spot at all, you think you're too far out, again, it is every licensed skydiver's job, or it's your responsibility to look out of the plane before you go and decide whether or not you're going to exit, okay? If you land off, it's not our fault, it's your fault for not looking down. We'll adjust the spot as needed. So if you look down and you're like, man, this is not good, I'm not going to make it back, it's definitely your right to not exit the airplane. But we do have the hook in a spot and where you should be able to make it back. But again, if you're uncomfortable, don't leave the plane. And if you're uncomfortable with that, you can always just move to the side. What might not be comfortable for you may be completely comfortable for somebody else. I'm talking about tandems in particular. We pull at 5,500 feet with a 340 square foot parachute overhead, especially if you don't have video. We'll get out a lot further away than maybe a fun jumper might. So just move out of the way, let the next people go, or maybe the next group will look out and say, no, that's not good. And then we'll kind of adjust things from there. Now that brings up another thing of how to look out of the plane. I see a lot of people in a spot and they're literally looking out the plane and their head's a foot inside the plane when they're looking out. That is not going to give you a good indication of where that plane is relative to the ground. So if you really want to get a good idea of where that plane is, you need to get your head out of the plane and look straight down. And that's going to give you a much better indication of where you are rather than being inside the plane looking out, because you know your visual reference is completely off. So if you're looking out of the plane, really get your head out there and look straight down so you can get a good idea of where you are at the moment. Is there any more questions before I move on?
Nope. I think, yeah. How much? So that's been about 30 minutes. So we've been trying to kind of keep the lunch and learn short since people are potentially on lunch breaks for work. What else did you want to cover?
I'll just do some final points, then we'll go here.
Okay.
So the big thing about the spot is just know the winds, if they're high, if they're low, and what general direction they're at. Another good point, you don't need to know the nitty gritty of it. It's cool if you want to know that, but it's all general. And if you have any questions, come ask me or any of the other instructors, and we'll give you an idea of what's going on. It's also good to know not only what the spot is, but what your forecast is. Are the winds going to change direction midday? Are they forecast to get lower? Are they forecasted to get higher? That's just a good way to mentally prep yourself for scenarios that may happen. Which leads to the next one. All about the spot is to mentally prep yourself for that. Meaning if you're going to be north, if the spot's north today, and say the upper winds are high, you can kind of mentally prep yourself. Oh, the winds are high, so I might have an out that's over there. The spots or the winds are low, I might get a little bit further out. So there's a good chance if I'm far out today and not able to make it back, these are going to be my spots that I want to land out. Knowing those kind of conditions and then preparing yourself for the potential of landing out greatly increases the safety of you being able to land out without making any rash decisions at the last moment. So always be knowing that information is going to keep you prepared. So when the situation arises, you're not panicking at the last minute. So that's about all I got. Again, it can get really complicated with the spot. Feel free to, if anybody has any questions, you can come up and ask me. I might ask you to hold on a second because I'm watching things, but I'd love to talk to you and kind of tell you what's going through my head and why we're making the decisions on the ground.
Graham did have a question. If you could go into a bit more detail with regards to the hook and the direction a movement group exiting during the hook should go.
Okay, so I'm going to keep it simple. So jump runs north. If you're going north with a left hook, that first movement group, theoretically, if they're going out first, should move away from the hook. Okay, so in this particular case, they would want to fly east a little bit, especially if this is moving, and then try to move back to that center point to where they ended up at. The reason why we ask you to do that is because if the hook gets kind of long and you guys move, the movement group moves west and maybe doesn't make it back to where they should, it causes concern for collision. Hopefully you can see over those 2 points. So that's, now there's a lot of different variables. Say the winds are really, really high. Maybe we haven't really needed a hook very much. I will tell people maybe you should go away from the river to do, because we all know the dangers of this river. So I may tell people maybe not move east, but move maybe south, and then come back to your spot. That way you don't get too far over the river. But theoretically, you want to move in the opposite direction of the hook to give the maximum amount of separation between the two groups.
Cool. I think Anthony, it sounded like he was asking a question, but I don't see a question. Or James Anthony Walters said, in the rare event of a right hook. And he said that when he did his AFP back in 2001, they did a right hook on his third or fourth jump and the plane stalled. So
I don't know how planes stalled.
I don't know who was flying.
We try to avoid it because it is a little bit more difficult to exit the plane on a right hook. Another problem with the right hook is as the plane's banking, you're away from, because the door is on the left, you can't see where the drop zone's at. So it's pretty unnerving. So as an AFP level 3 doing a right hook, I can see it's unnerving because you can't see where the drop zone is.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do our best to try to avoid right hooks, but sometimes you got to do it to make it. And again, if it comes to that, then you just wait till after the hook, you let other people go, and we go from there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's it. I don't see any other questions. But thank you so much, Anthony, for going over that. And yeah, thank you everybody for watching. And we'll see you guys on Safety Day, April 1st. Woo!
All right, guys. See you soon. Thanks.
Bye.